But let's talk about this certain thing. Footballing awards and pretty much deciding the validity of the players winning awards in general. Let me just ask a pretty like I think over the top. It's just like a vague question and everything. And do you think now players that get rewards today are quite valid in terms of like, or do you think that players now are just getting rewards for the sake of it and for commercial sake?
I guess it kind of go hand in hand. Like for example, the Premier League only a couple years ago they just added the Playmaker Award. So like before, assist makers weren't being obviously they're being praised, but they weren't being given a specific award for that. We were getting the top goal scorer and we're getting the Player of the Year. So I guess they were kind of looking at that retrospect, but maybe rewarding somebody's talent for being the best defender of the year. Not just saying that, but maybe giving them a title, maybe giving them a trophy. Like who knows? We also have the clean sheet award, obviously, but yeah. So maybe trying to award different performances that aren't just directly goal scoring or assist making or keeping clean sheets. Maybe awarding other different positions.
Mm-hmm. Um, I want to talk about like the certain types of awards as well. You look at, for example, like the Ballon d'Or winner and everything. Obviously, we've seen a lot of that has been dominated by Messi, Ronaldo, etc., etc. But then after that, we saw Luka Modric actually winning it. A lot of people didn't actually agree that it should have been Luka Modric. And then after that, of course, Van Dijk versus Messi. I mean, debatably, they both had pretty good, season and everything. But Van Dijk, I think, in terms of a defender, he was really good and everything. The last defender to ever win it was Fabio Cannavaro. And I believe for his World Cup, triumphs and everything. But however, defender, is there a bias within defenders, for example? And then of course this time around it did get cancelled, and I think obviously we all know who really should have won it on the night and everything. Robert Lewandowski.
Robert Lewandowski.
So is that particularly maybe an example that it is like, for example, maybe like the Ballon d'Or example, it's more of like a commercial thing now over another thing. And also we look at the awards this season as well. You look at someone like the Best Manager award. Obviously, we've seen Hansi Flick. I think he had a brilliant season with Bayern Munich, considering they weren't actually meant to achieve a lot of things. They were in kind of like turmoil at the start and everything when they sacked their manager. Hansi Flick was able to manage to turn it around and everything, and yet still, despite all that, Klopp did win the award. I don't particularly think Klopp. I do particularly think Klopp should have been in that, that calling and everything, but I don't particularly think he should have won it. And I want to show you guys, if you actually don't know, of how it was being organized as well. Let me just get that up real quick. Give me a second. Let me just quickly share my screen on the whole thing. So right here is pretty much how they kind of like deciphered and everything. As you can clearly see as well, they pretty much level on points in terms of scoring. Jurgen Klopp and Hansi Flick both with 24 points. However, it was decided based on the national team coaches, which I don't know how particularly that counts as valid, because most of the international coaches don't, they don't come into the Premier League, so I don't know how they have majority voting. Obviously, the fan points, it's obviously, Hansi Flick. The fans know it. In terms of the media points and everything, obviously Hansi Flick takes that over there. In terms of captain's points,
the captain's points surprised me.
Yeah, that's.
I would have thought a lot more of the captains would have went with Flick instead of Klopp. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, that's the thing I'm surprised with.
Wait,
in a coach's point of perspective, I kind of understand, like, in terms of like what Klopp can like do, because I've seen it many times before that he tends to like change things and everything in certain games and everything, and it has like done it. So I understand, like, in terms of tactical flexibility, in terms of the coach point of view. But captains, yeah, that quite surprised me as well, with the whole thing as well. But now looking at those examples and everything, like, is it an issue with how these awards are being like marked and everything, and do they need to be better, or is it like influenced by like the media? Like what really influences these awards to be given to a certain person in
I
this
think a
modern day?
lot of it goes down to like bias, commercial bias, and stuff like that. Like for example, the Messi Van Dijk situation. It could have gone either way, but because Van Dijk isn't the best player of our generation, even though he had a brilliant season, most football fans would have gone with Messi. And so how are the other votes like made for that? So is it all players that are voted for the Ballon d'Or?
I think for the players, yeah, they vote on who's like the Ballon d'Or winner, and they pretty much choose like, and that's more of like their personal preferences and everything. Obviously, I do think there are other external factors, but but it's mostly a vote, definitely on like who gets like the certain awards and everything. I think maybe because like Modric as well like was in a World Cup and everything, maybe a lot of his mates and everything thought Modric was the guy, and maybe that. Especially with defenders as well, you look at defenders and how there's kind of like a bias as well. Actually, you know what? I want to talk about Bayern Munich in general. I think they've been obviously like underappreciated for a lot of it. You look at FIFA, for example, in terms of rewarding them with ratings and everything. I think they were piss poor, to be quite honest with you, with the ratings and everything. I think Muller should have been
Oh yeah,
credited
100%.
more. The only one that like did well was Robert Lewandowski. Like, why? Like, you look at like Alaba, for example. He had a pretty good season. You know,
Muller broke the assist record and he went down a rating, or he stayed the same or he went down, one of the
I
two.
think he stayed the
Yeah.
He's the
same.
most underrated, to be honest. He's the most underrated, to be honest. Muller, I don't think they give enough consideration to him. Being what sort of a versatile player he is, I think he should have got the Ballon d'Or sometime or some bigger award. I don't
Thiago,
really
for
know.
example, was rated actually one of the
Exactly.
best midfielders in the Champions League as well, especially how he controlled the game and everything. Just, I think, did he went down a rating or something like that? He went or something like that.
He went down 3 ratings.
He went down three. That is unbelievable.
Or two or three. Two or three, yeah.
And then the memes of obviously when he and they actually did favor a lot of like the English sides and everything. I think this time around they did favor a lot of, and maybe do you think particularly there is possibility like because we've seen a lot of the La Liga players getting most of like the votes and everything, which I think a lot of people particularly didn't disagree at the time, and now English players as well. So do you think there's like a Spanish English kind of bias when it comes to these certain awards as well?
Yeah, like what year was it that there was no other league in the team of the year other than La Liga players? I think it was like 2012 or 2013. So like they used to dominate votings all the time because of the Real Madrid and Barcelona clash and like the kind of players, like the names of the players that they had at the time. But now that we see the bigger names in the Premier League, so their names holding a lot more value than, let's say, players from the league or players from the Bundesliga or players from the Serie A, other than Ronaldo, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so their names are holding a lot higher value because of the league that they play in. So I guess they're being rated a little higher, and their stature is already being put on a little higher value than other players.
I think it's very interesting as well, is because like a lot of like us, right, and a lot of people that do follow like other things, we tend to speak a lot of English and everything, right? And I think it's used as like a neutral language when it comes to like the Champions League draws and everything and whatnot, where they kind of have that kind of using English is like, right, that's like going to be the neutral language and everything, and that's going to use it. And I think that's what ties in for people to watch more of the Premier League rather than a lot of the other leagues and everything. And also an argument that is the Premier League really the best league and everything, when we're seeing a lot of excitement in Serie A right now. We see a lot of excitement in the Bundesliga and everything. And to be fair, I think the Bundesliga is like in terms of matches and everything is more entertaining to watch in terms of like them wanting to attack more and everything. And it's not like a disrespect to the Premier League, but I think a lot of people that are like in Western or even in England, for example, and everything tend to undermine a lot of the talent that does come through and everything, right? And obviously, like I think when we do measure like the greatness of a player, we see them in like European competition, right? to see like, okay, that's how we determine like the team of the years and everything, right? And that's like another question I could ask as well. Like, what classifies when a player is world class or not?
That's a good question.
The amount, his stats, mainly his stats, and what contribution he has done to the team as a player.
Okay,
Those two
so
things,
Yeah,
but you look at stats
those
for
two
but I
things
example.
are
think
most valid. Yeah.
You look at stats of a
yeah,
player though. You look at the times of like Xavi and Iniesta, for example. They didn't produce pretty much the biggest of stats, but they were really
Right.
integral in the way they played in their team as well. So just based on a stats point of view, do you really think that stats is like the be all and end all, right? And then you could look at like, okay, how do they perform in like the competitions as well, like like they produce in like the big moments and everything, but what if they're not able to do it consistently, for example? Like you look at people like Drogba,
Mhm.
and how he's being compared to Vardy and everything. Yes, Drogba was, a great player in the big moments, but he was never able to do it at a consistent basis and everything, right?
Yeah, he was never like a player that could score a huge volume of goals in a single season. But yeah, so exactly those points.
And as well, like
He would
when
come
we the the Premier League is probably gonna stay for a very long time. Like La Liga and everything gonna be staying for a very long time. Like we're gonna see more players that are gonna produce way better in those ages and times. So people like your Drogbas, for example, like is gonna be overshadowed by players that are gonna improve constantly and they're gonna achieve higher things and everything, higher stats and everything. Like we're gonna see players that are gonna blow away the 32 goal hole in a single season in the Premier League. That's going to be beat for a while, and do those players like hold higher value than players than before? You got to ask the question as well, right? And especially when you look at it in like piecing it out together and making the best XIs, for example, and like giving the best awards to certain players as well. Like, what kind of composition as well? Like, why do we favor more attacking players rather than defensive players, for example, right? Even though like maybe impactfully wise, they've done a better job, compared to other players, right?
Right. I mean, the whole game is based on how many the goals. The team that scores the most goals is the most entertaining. Like, look, Jose Mourinho Spurs. They park the bus. They are really good defensive. We call it to make fun of them, to make mockery of them that they park the bus. But defensively, they're so sound. But all we look at, the game is based on goals. So the more the team scores the goals, the more we favor the team. You know. So maybe in that way they favor attackers. Like, have you ever seen people? I mean, now that we praise Virgil van Dijk so much, did they ever praise Roy Keane or Nemanja Vidic when during their prime time? When they favored more Wayne Rooney, Cristiano Ronaldo,
Hmm.
Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs. Yes, right?
I mean,
And the same thing with Liverpool.
that is so
Right.
interesting actually, because like we tend to compare like players in the past and everything, but I feel like even then, like we tend to like trash on these players and everything, right? And it just shows that we don't have like a certain appreciation at that moment, right? And we tend to kind of undermine players as well. I think it comes from the culture as well. When we look at it, we tend to keep like we give to give certain luxuries to certain players that have achieved like a certain point in everything, and even if they don't do well, for example, I look at someone like Hazard, for example, quite honestly. Like a lot of people will still defend him right up the ass, man. I'm not even joking, man. Like even when he has like a bad season and everything, people still want to defend this guy. It's like, oh, this and that and everything, because he's proven like at a certain point that he actually really does good, but he still hasn't like kind of delivered in that kind of like that trust and everything that people had of him. So it's a very interesting thing when we kind of classify people and we give awards to them as well, because like some people may look at a certain player, right? Coaches, for example, right? They may look at a certain player as like, this is a really good player and everything, right? And then in terms of a writer's point of view, right? You look at like Jordan Henderson, for example, where a lot of people wanted like Kevin De Bruyne to win the PFA Player of the Year, right? But in terms of the writer's Player of the Year, it was Jordan Henderson. However, in a writer's perspective, taking Liverpool, to their first title in 30 years is kind of like a dream, like a writer's dream come true, right? It's like an unimaginary story and everything, right? But a lot of the fans, they looked at it, it's like, nah, this ain't it. Like, this is not a great story, the blah, 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 blah. And they kind of like neglect him winning the award. And like, I think to be fair, a lot of people didn't think of Jordan Henderson as, big and everything, but, he put those things as well. So is it really also like a perspective thing as well that we should?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of perspectives because like you said right now, like the PFA, like the Writers Association Player of the Year was given to Henderson because it's a great storyline and it should be given credit for what it is. But when it comes to the PFA Player of the Year, it's usually regarded as a more like significant,
yeah,
and it's a more performance-based like award. So when I'm not sure who votes for the like the PFA Player of the Year award, but I think the people that were voting, they looked at the season and said, okay, if we vote for Henderson on this, it's going to be unfair on De Bruyne's part because De Bruyne is a very integral part of Manchester City's team and how they operate as a team. And, with them finishing second last season, you had to give some credit at least to De Bruyne for his contributions in that City team.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess when we're looking at the PFA Player of the Year award, majority of the time we look at the winning team, the team that wins the Premier League, and we look at their most integral player for that season. So Henderson, he was always a solid. He wasn't making headlines because that's not his position. He's not the one that's scoring goals or whatnot. So he's not going to make the headlines. But he's always been he was a consistent player for Liverpool in the season. So that's why it's justified that he should have been in that voting. And it's also with the storyline of Liverpool not winning the Premier League, and that's their first Premier League title, him captaining that side to the victory, that's why he was there. But we usually look at the winning team and see who's their most integral player. Like, okay, Henderson didn't win last year. The year before that, when City won it, we didn't have the Premier League Player of the Year. It was Van Dijk. The year before that,
it was Mo Salah.
Yeah, and then Liverpool came in fourth. So most of the time is with the team's Player of the Year for the winning team. But yeah,
I do want to ask this question now as well. When it comes to rewards and everything, I think a lot of people didn't know how like the manager award was going to come down and everything, right? We really didn't know how the voting system particularly works, right? I know like when we look at like like offsides and everything, people have an idea and everything, except it's not like the Premier League doesn't push down to your face that these are the rules for like VAR and everything. Like you can search it up on your own time, but they don't push that kind of thing. You look at the Champions League, for example, how they always talk about like how the procedure goes again, right? Because they want to make sure that people that are new and everything knows how the system works and everything. So there's no like confusion on like, oh, why is this certain thing happening? It should be da 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 and everything. Do you think awards should kind of state right off the bat, open and publicly, time and time again, how they're gonna kind of mark these awards, so then that way fans could kind of see and understand like, right, this is how the award is going to be looked upon. I can understand how this award is going to be given, and because again, we do have abstract ideas on how it should work and everything, but we don't really know like the procedure. Like I said before, the Manager of the Year award. I don't know actually how that 24 points came up to be quite honest with you. I don't know if they condensed it or anything, but and then they come up with like, okay, the national team coach, like, why is that? But okay, maybe if you stated it earlier, I think it would be better in terms of like the fans would understand it as well. Everybody's just
Right.
gonna nod their head. I think
Too much of information, so it's hard to process.
I'm sorry about that. I think I've been giving quite
It's
a lot of
okay.
information and everything, but like,
I mean, it's good information, but sometimes it takes a lot to process.
yeah,
That's the thing.
yeah, I understand that as well. I mean, like, I at least me personally, if I knew like what was the criteria and everything, it's like if someone you're given an assignment, right? But you're not given the rubric about it, so you don't know what's going to be in like what you have to do in the assignment in the first place, right? So I think maybe
Right.
rewards kind of implemented, kind of like, okay, this is how we're gonna reward the players and everything, and they kind of push that kind of narrative publicly rather than you have to like, okay, you got to search up for it and everything. It leaves less for like controversy and everything, in my opinion, right? That's why I think particularly people are okay with like, I know like people talk about like, oh, how it's rigged and everything with the whole Champions League like draw and everything, but at least people know like how the draws are going to work and everything, so then people are not like questioning like, oh my god, why is this draw happening, this doesn't make any sense, I should be having Liverpool, I should be able to have Liverpool. But if you tell constantly, they'll be like, okay, yeah, I mean, yes, they'll be annoyed by it. It's like one of those things, like you get annoyed by it, but like at the same time, like if you did it, it wasn't stated like time and time again, you'll be questioning it more, in my opinion. So
Is
yeah.
there like
Yeah,
any
and
particular reason why we're not given this kind of information? Like, is there something that's happening behind that like we don't know about under the table? Like, why can't we know what's the rubric for this judgment?
I mean, like I said before, I mean, if you search it up like in your time again, but again, like that information is really hard to find and everything. Quite honestly, like even for like the offside thing, right? When I was trying to find out and everything, um, they talked about like the grid lines and everything, but they never talked about why particularly like they measure it from the elbow actually on the website. You know, like why particularly, even though like it's right here for a handball, so yeah, some of the things are not stated. But like if you do state it publicly, and yes, it's annoying at times, but I mean like I think it's kind of good that we are given like certain things and everything about it. And you know, when we look at it in real
okay,
life, as yeah.
okay. For instance, if you take these movies award shows like these Oscars and stuff, we never know how their rubric was. So how do they rate a movie and how publicly appealing a certain movie was?
That's
But here we kind of develop an idea of how it works on how a player is. So
mhm.
they give out awards, right?
I think that's a good
Here
idea.
we kind of, yeah.
I think that's a good
If you
idea as
if you
well
see
in
it with
terms of movies in general as well. You know, like if, you know, some people are absolutely baffled when a certain award is being given that's
movie
not
doesn't
like
get it.
on. Yeah, and they're like asking like, oh, why is this the issue and everything? What's going on, right? If you just state like, okay, well, the more of the directors will have more influence over the actual fans and everything about it. It's like, okay, well,
Mhm.
it's those certain people and everything. Then we can criticize the actual directors regarding it, or like now we know like the coaches like Jurgen Klopp like won it based on national team coaches. Now people are thinking like, oh my god, that is absolutely ridiculous. Why is national, you know, actually in general, why are national team coaches determining also like a big determining the next big determining factor when it comes to rewards? It doesn't make any sense because national team coaches, they're not gonna verse, like I understand coaching, but like national team coaches, like why should they have like a certain influence as well? It shouldn't be like just regular coaches, you know.
Yeah. Or maybe even the players, right? Because, players, see different coaches and their coaching styles, and they're like, okay, well, if I were to play, say, under, I don't know, Klopp instead of Marcelo Bielsa, right? You can maybe see that change, and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps that could, make the player vote also more significant as well.
For sure, for sure. pretty much, I think the conversation is brilliant and everything. Do you guys have any last remarks before we actually tie this up? Because I think, first of all, actually very tired as well. But I actually love the discussion as always. But yeah, do you guys have any last remarks regarding like footballing awards in general?
I
I
have like
think
one final point to make. I want to say that usually when like whoever like the committee is for determining awards, like when they don't really release like the rubric or the criteria for winning that award, I think it kind of just signifies that at the end of the day, no matter how good those like players or coaches have been in that season, it eventually goes down to their popularity as well, as we've seen with like the Ballon d'Or, right? Because let's say I don't know, a player like Salah comes through and scores 30 goals in a season and whatnot and wins a couple of trophies. He's going to be in the Ballon d'Or conversation, right? Just like Lewandowski right now. But people will also look at the candidates too. And so if those candidates are, generational like greats like Messi and Ronaldo, based on popularity alone, people would be more likely to pick Messi or Ronaldo for like the Ballon d'Or or whatever the award is, just because of that popularity aspect that comes with the award. And I think that's kind of unfair for the players, especially for the guys that work really hard to make it to that level. But again, players like Messi and Ronaldo also deserve credit for what they do. So
Obviously. And I think it's just because, once again, I do want to point this out. It's just they look for players that are going to give like the most generate amount of money and everything. I think like with the whole fandom with Lewandowski and everything, I think they had to give him the award because like look at the shouts and everything, right? And then like as a corporation, like you know what? Yeah, this is the person that should get the award because of the kind of like biases and everything. And I think fan culture definitely is like a good thing, but I don't think it also should be the deciding factor and everything. If you have tons of Egyptians that like support Salah, for example, and he has like a poor season, like come on, like do you really think like fan opinions should be like put onto that? Or like for Brazil, like Neymar is like quite a popular figure and everything. Do you think like Neymar should, I think fans have a good idea of like things and everything, but I mean like certain fans, they do have certain biases as well. So I don't particularly think they should have certain. So it really is difficult and everything. But I think we can all come to a consensus that if we do have a little bit of transparency of how the awards are being conducted at the start of like the award night and everything, rather than we have to actually look it up and say like, okay, this is how it goes about it. Because again, the general fan isn't gonna like search up these things. Like the general fan isn't gonna search up like how does VAR work and whatnot and everything. They have a certain idea about it, but they're not gonna search up like, okay, why is this being looked about it? In terms of like why like players are like doing well and everything, that's up to the experts to kind of explain it, right? We can't expect like a general fan to say like a proper opinion on like, okay, the fixture congestion and everything and many other things as well. So I think transparency when it comes to awards would better alleviate like certain criticism, and we can direct certain criticism towards something else rather than the award itself.
I have one question regarding like the Ballon d'Or. Like, would you guys say that the Ballon d'Or kind of lost some of its value over the years, considering like some of the players' individual seasons that they've had, and they haven't won the Ballon d'Or compared to somebody else winning like Messi or Ronaldo because of their popularity and their status? Would you say it's kind of lost some of its like value?
Yeah, go for it, Jack Hammer.
Yes.
Akilesh.
Yes, you remember Samuel Eto'o? Samuel Eto'o and in 2009, I guess? I'm not pretty sure. Samuel Eto'o, he was first of all getting biased by Pep Guardiola and Barcelona. And he was putting all his efforts and being one of the best players at that time, but still he didn't get the Ballon d'Or and he was robbed. I don't know who won the Ballon d'Or that time. Do you know who won it instead of Eto'o?
I think it was Messi, maybe.
Messi, I think. Yeah, he got robbed. And the second thing is with Ribery. Ribery,
Yeah, that's
Oh,
it. That's
yeah.
it. That's what I was thinking.
that is
He
the
should have
biggest.
won it that
That is
year.
the biggest. That is the biggest robbery of all. Ribery, Dan Eto. Ribery is the biggest.
Robbery. Oh,
I
what
mean,
a iconic duo that was. Like back in the day, I think when it comes to football as well, when you hear of like greats like Ronaldinho and everything, I think it's like they talk about like how it was so playful and everything when it comes to football. Nowadays, it's just
Like
angry Twitter
indirect impact too. Yeah, it's angry Twitter.
and like toxic people on Twitter. One of the Jeff actually was naming like, oh, he doesn't like the. I mean, I don't mind a good set of banter. I just think it's quite far and everything. That could be another topic that we could discuss later on when we're having these discussions. And I think, but yeah, in terms of rewards and everything, yeah, I think it is mostly commercial compared to like last time where I don't think there was a big ideal to it because as well, like obviously like with posters and everything, right? I think that was the big thing in terms of advertisement and everything, right? But in terms of a global thing and everything, it wasn't really like big back in the day. And nowadays we're seeing more like, especially like in the early times of like television and whatnot, right? It wasn't really that big, but I think like closer to the time and as well, and I think that defines our era, Messi and Ronaldo, right? And they're kind of like putting that kind of picture and everything. And like once these guys go and everything, like that fear that people are doing, like, oh my god, now we don't have Messi and Ronaldo. It's not going to end football because at the end of the day, football has lived on for a very long period of time. But putting that kind of culture and like towards all of us, and of course they mean a lot to us, definitely. But a lot of like the media and everything are putting and planting those seeds. Like these are like the big guys and everything, and and that's how we're setting our standards when it comes to other players too. Even though particularly like, of course, like certain players have definitely outperformed them in certain seasons and everything, but because they are just huge people as well, especially in recent seasons as well, where Lewandowski was like the big hitter as well, did better than Messi and Ronaldo, right? So yeah, it is very interesting when it comes to like class and in terms of choosing someone that's world class and you know.
Yeah, for sure.
But guys,
Yeah, well,
wait, you wanted to say one more thing, Akilesh?
no, it's okay.
And on
I
that
just said
note,
yeah, it's fine.
yeah. In terms of that note, guys, if you do want to absolutely continue this discussion about it, and we, enlighten you some ideas on it, I think consensually as well among all of us, we do agree on, compared to other topics where we did have other things that we do want a little bit more transparency regarding these rewards and everything, rather than just like looking at about it right away. But if you guys want to continue this conversation and everything, please give comments in the video.